When we are faced with a certain amount of uncertainty, because there's we have insufficient information to really know for certain what's right, what's real, and what's not real, what's true and what's not true. Very often we don't have sufficient information to make that decision, and very often we think we do, but sometimes it's so obvious that we really can't say for sure one way or the other. And in those circumstances, particularly judges, but also trial lawyers and other people in those circumstances will use this phrase. They'll say it's better to err on the side of caution. Now, what that means is, if we can't really know, if we have two or more possibilities, and we just simply are not capable or not able to reach with certainty a definite decision where we really feel sure that we know we got the right answer there. If all available answers seem to have more or less a somewhat equivalent, at least, odds of turning out to be right or turning out to be wrong, then to err on the side of caution is considered usually the wise approach, which means, since any possible answer that you might choose to go with and say, okay, I'm going to choose this one, and I think this is most likely to be correct, but I'm not really sure. It might turn out to be wrong, for all I know. Could be the other thing that was right, and then if I choose this, then I'm wrong. But on the other hand, I'm just as uncertain about the other option. So if I chose that, I could turn out to be wrong. I don't know. So the thing to do, usually, is to say, well, since all available options seem to be roughly, or even not even roughly, but since as all available options have at least some degree of uncertainty that any of them could turn out to be the wrong choice, then you want to make sure that of all, sort of on the process of elimination, you want to choose the option which will do the least damage if it turns out to be wrong, because any one of them could turn out to be wrong, for all you know. So, foremost in your decision making may well be the thought that if this does turn out to be, I want to choose the option, since any option could turn out to be wrong. I want to choose that one which, if it does turn out to be wrong, will have done the least damage by having chosen it. And that's the point, to err on the side of caution. And this is my attitude about medication and all these things that I think are bogus diagnoses. I think the medical profession makes up a lot of bogus diagnoses that they call diseases or illnesses or conditions or ailments or disorders. Lately what they do is they use the word disorder or syndrome to make up some new name for something that they then will prescribe drugs for as a treatment. And I think that between the two extremes of saying, well, I refuse to accept the medical profession's authority at all, and everything that they say is suspect and probably bullshit. Or the opposite extreme, where people say, oh, who am I to question? They know what's best, they're the experts. I mustn't even question what they do, but just follow their instructions without question. Which of these two options, if it turned out to to be the wrong one. If either of these two options turns out to be wrong, either of these two judgments that the medical profession is just bogus altogether, or the medical profession is infallible, which one, if you went down that route and it turned out you had taken the wrong route, which one would do the least damage? Which one would do the most damage? So examine that. If the medical profession is saying, oh, this is this disorder and that's syndrome, and you got Asperger's, and you got this burgers and that burgers, and you got such and such syndrome, and blah 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 blah, so you have to take these pills. If you say, no, screw that, I'm not going to take any pills, and it turns out you were wrong. It turns out they kind of did know. They weren't full of shit. There was something to what they were saying, and you refused to take those pills that they were offering you. Okay, how much damage is going to take place in that situation? Well, you might have gotten better, and since you didn't take their prescriptions, you might even have gotten worse, or at least not improved. Maybe you got worse. Well, what happened then? What happened if they were right and you were wrong and you didn't take their pills? Okay, so maybe you got sick. Maybe you even died. Okay, so that's it. And unless you're some kind of a psychotic sadist, and you're going around being a serial killer and torturing people and stuff, unless you're that extreme, in which case I think it would be fairly obvious anyhow to recognize that some sort of a medication to some kind of something to affect your mood swings, at that point it becomes kind of obvious that you do need something, even if it's just tranquilizers. On the other hand, at the other end of the extreme, if you say, well, no, that seems wrong to try to set myself up as knowing more than these so-called experts and these authority figures. They know more about chemistry and psychiatry and psychology than I do. I should not try to presume to say that I'm right and they're wrong when they know what they're all about. So I'm going to follow their instructions. I'm going to trust them. What happens if you turn out to be wrong in that situation? What if it turns out that they are in fact pulling a scam on you? What if they are in fact simply making up bullshit ailments so that they can then tranquilize you, put you on drugs? And they're wrong. What if they're wrong? How much damage will be done by that? Well, how much damage will be done by that is if they're making up bogus conditions and ailments and diseases, and they're medicating it, and they're presuming to go around dictating to everybody, you have to take this chemical, and you have to take this pill, and this pill, and that chemical, and this drug, and it's not even, and it's unnecessary because it's all bullshit. How much damage is done in that situation? So I think between these two extremes, in my opinion, between these two extremes of either being too skeptical of the medical profession or too trusting of the medical profession, which one, to err on the side of caution, which one is more cautious? Which one will do less damage if it turns out to be wrong? Which of these two choices will result in the least damage if it turns out to be wrong? Being too overly skeptical of the medical profession or being overly trusting? I think being overly skeptical will result in less damage than being overly trusting, and that's why, to err on the side of caution, I think it's safer and wiser to presume, to try to not presume that all these things that they come up with are necessarily true. To recognize that they can and certainly have in the past and continue to make up bogus conditions and syndromes and disorders, because it's in their interest, it's in the interest of the pharmaceutical companies, it's in the interest of the government who want the society to be tranquilized. They do make these things up. They certainly, it can be established, it can be proven that the medical profession has in the past made up quite a number of conditions and diseases that turned out to be bogus. So to err on the side of caution, I say, better to be overly skeptical than overly trusting of the medical industry. Better to refuse to take medication on your own, call it paranoid or insecurity, rather than be too gullible and trusting and take medications that you may not need. To err on the side of caution. If it turns out you're wrong, if you refused medications rather than took too many, I think you've done less damage by refusing than by, if you're wrong in that case, than by being too trusting and taking medications if that turns out to be wrong.